All right, magic makers. Today, I want to bring up a subject that I feel needs to be talked about. And you know how I am. I feel like you need to hear about it. I want to be the one to tell you about it. And today, I want to talk about intermittent fasting because I feel that every time someone says, "Oh, you need to lose weight over 40," like the first words that come out of their mouth, beside protein, is intermittent fasting. And I feel like it's just caught fire. And this is where I need to just drop in and do some damage control, some truth giving. Just because it's trendy doesn't mean it's the answer for everybody over 40. Doesn't mean it's the answer for menopause. And I know there is a very popular doctor out there that is her jam, that she's like, you must intermittent fast. And I get that. And full disclosure, I have intermittent fast. So I'm not just talking from this like lofty tower. And it was a tool that I use to help me break myself from eating 5 meals a day. And while I don't intermittent fast anymore, I will tell you what I do instead. So let's just set the stage for intermittent fasting because I feel like it's a term that gets thrown around, but maybe there's no definition. So, you know me, I need to give some definition, some context so we all are on the same page. So, intermittent fasting is a daily time restricted eating. So, um, you may have heard that people fast for 16 hours and they eat for 8, or they fast for 12 and eat for 12. So that's, 16 hours of fasting, 8 hours of eating, 12 hours of fasting, 12 hours of eating. There is what's called OMAD. You eat one meal a day. Some people do what's called 5-2, fast for, eat for, eat for 5 days and fast for 2 days. There are people who do like, do weekly fast, so they don't eat for one day. So there's a myriad of ways that you can come across a fast. I mean, there are religious fasts, during the high holidays. Uh, Jews don't eat from sun up to sundown. There's also Ramadan, where Muslims don't eat until sundown. So there's so many constructs of fasting. But then there's also what's called time restricted eating, where you don't eat after a certain time. And for a long time, there was this whole construct of like, don't eat after 6. Like, 6 was this magic number, right? So at the end of the day, we have to decide how those hours work for us. And so I had a client who teaches group fitness. She's also a school teacher. So she would teach from, say, 8 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon. And then she would teach 2 classes. So she would teach a class again at 5 p.m. And then she would teach a class at 6 p.m. And so for most people who are doing the 16-8 fasting, most people stop eating after 6. Well, she's actually teaching a class. So her stopping eating at 6 p.m. did not work for her. And she was struggling and trying to make it work for her, but it didn't work. And so one of my big challenges with intermittent fasting is that people get so fixated on the rules, but they don't ask how the rules apply to them. There's also, well, it's popular because it's easy, right? I don't have to cook my favorite foods, right? It's not like you get handed this, don't eat this food list and make sure you eat that food list. There's no tracking. Like if you're someone who's like, I am not tracking my food, there's no tracking involved. There's no real learning curve. You just have to, maybe set an alarm on your clock to be like, stop putting food in your pie hole, right? Um, People like it because, yeah, there is a weight reduction because we're finally kind of like closing down the kitchen. I believe wholeheartedly. And after my last meal of the day, shut that kitchen down. And if I'm still hungry, it's a sign that I haven't been eating enough throughout the day, or it's a habit. Um, Improves insulin sensitivity. Many of us ladies over 40, a lot of the weight that we're seeing stuck on us is because, we do become more desensitized to insulin as we age. The second part of it is that if I'm always snacking, I don't give my body an opportunity to rest and digest. I might have more energy, right? Because I'm being more focused about when I'm giving my body food. I can see my cardiovascular health improve primarily because my insulin is improving as well as my blood sugar is improving. So that's going to improve my cardiovascular health, healthy aging, right? If I'm allowing myself to have more space between my meals, I'm allowing the unhealthy cells to slough off and be able to be removed from my system, right? But here's the kicker: just because all those things are great, right? I'm not knocking any of those things, but just because it works for some of some of you, doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody, especially when we throw our hormones in the mix, right? Everybody here is a special snowflake, everyone. And you might have similar traits, but everyone's is a different approach here. So let's just press the pause button on all the hype around fasting, right? It might not be the golden ticket you're looking for when it comes to weight loss. So let's just take a little peek behind the curtain and be like, what exactly happens when you fast? So, or when you eat. So let's talk about what happens when you eat and then what happens when you fast. Okay. So after I eat, I finish my meal and I'm like, oh, that was delicious. Your body goes into action, right? So your body is now given a fresh set of tools and it's like, okay, let's break this down. So it takes the nutrients and it just starts to pull it apart and sending the nutrients off through your bloodstream. So all food is broken down into glucose, right? So it's breaks, once it's in your stomach, breaks it down, turns it into glucose, shuttles it through to the blood to say, okay, you go here, you go here, you go there. Any excess food that is not needed is sent off to storage, right? So it's put up in the attic as body fat. So whenever I'm feeling full, satiated after it, that is I get a signal in my stomach that goes up to my brain that says, hey girl, we're full down here. No need to keep filling it up, right? So for so many years, I'm raising my hand, so guilty of this. I was told that I needed to stoke my metabolism and I never wanted to feel hungry because that was a sign that my metabolism was tanking and I needed to make sure that I always had food on board. So I was supposed to eat every 2 to 3 hours. And please tell me I'm not the only person who did that. And I did that for decades. And I basically overate really healthy foods. I just overate myself into packing on weight. So when I was doing that, I kept keeping my blood sugar high. Now I'm not saying this happens for everyone. For me, I am my own special snowflake. I was I was desensitizing myself to insulin and I was constantly pressing the doorbell to my pancreas to help me break down the glucose in my system. So about after an hour after you eat, the food hits the bloodstream and your pancreas releases insulin. And basically insulin is what is the key, right? If your cell is a door, if your cells are doors, insulin's the key that opens up the door to let in, excuse me, that lets in the nutrition. And if the door is the cells are full, the door is not going to open for me, right? Because it's getting used to like someone always knocking on the door. And so when I have a surplus of food, it's going to be taken away and it's going to be stored for later. And so that it's going to be like, oh, we'll use that fuel later, right? And then after a few hours, say like 6 hours after you eat, all the energy from the meal that you ate, your body is used up. And so now it's going to tap into our fat stores. So many of us, like I said, I was trained, I ate every 2 to 3 hours. So my body didn't even get a chance to go through its full digestive cycle before I was packing more food on board, right? So your body is taking about 6 to 8 hours to digest the meal you just ate. And so if I were according to fasting, if I were to wait until 8 hours, 16 hours, it would give my body an opportunity to go into the fat stores and say, hey, let's go up in the attic and use some of the shit we actually have. Now, if I don't eat again for 8 to 12 hours, that's where the body is going up and grabbing stuff into the dipping into the fat stores. And this is why people like intermittent fasting, because it starts to teach your body to run on fat as well as carbs, right? So right now, you might have heard the term being a sugar burner or a fat burner. You're looking to be a fat burner versus a sugar burner, because sugar burner is that your body is going to like say, hey, we need more food, when many of us have a good decent amount of crap stored up in our attics. So the difference between fasting and starving, fasting is like hitting the pause button, right? I'm just pausing it. I'm being intentional. It's in a controlled manner. Starvation is, on the other hand, is when we go way too long without food and our body is literally saying, where is the food? And we're talking like 2 or 3 days with no food in sight. And believe it or not, your body can go longer without food than it can go without water. And so your body's like, come on, where's food? So that when the body thinks food isn't coming, it starts to conserve energy. So it starts to slow down organs. It starts to slow down different mechanisms in our body. I want you to think about, like, how like you're at the last dregs of like the toothpaste in the last dregs of toothpaste in your tube, and you're just like squeezing, you're rubbing it on the counter, you're doing all things. That's what your body is doing. It is like literally trying to find every last piece of energy it can find from your body to keep your brain, your heart, and your lungs going. So when fasting is done right, it's like a mini workout for your cells. It's allowing your body to help clean up the dead cells and stay on track. Plus, fasting teaches you that hunger isn't the end of the world. And that's one of the things I needed to learn, because so many of us feel that hungry is an emergency. They're like, oh my God, I'm hungry. I'm going to die. And, like I said, is it that you've gone for like 2 hours, or has it been you've gone for 2 or 3 days, right? That's starving. Going for a few hours without a meal, that's hungry. And so many of us have been taught to fear hunger. And so one of the things that intermittent fasting is one way to help break you of this kind of snacking rule. But the other thing is just surfing hunger. Like, am I really hungry? Am I bored? Am I thirsty? Is there something I'm trying to avoid? Am I procrastinating? Right? I know I'm a procrastinating eater. Like, I'll be like, oh, I'm supposed to be writing this document, but let's see what's in the fridge, or let's see what's in the freezer, or maybe I need to make something, right? We've all done that. So the next time you're considering fasting, it's all about balance, right? Balance is a tool, and I don't want us to overdo it, right? So here's where we got to check ourselves before we wreck ourselves. So why am I not a fan for fasting for why am I not a fan for fasting, right? I get it. Fasting is the cool kid on the block. Everyone's doing it, right? It's kind of like back in the day when everyone was rocking their Jordache jeans and you had on Sassoon and you're like, the horror. It's new, it's shiny. I get it, but it's not a fit for everyone, especially for us ladies over 40. So here, I'm just gonna break out like the main reasons why I struggle with just blanket telling people to intermittent fast. It's hard, right? If you're someone who's going from 5 meals a day down to 1 meal a day, or stop eating at 6 o'clock, you have to really like be that good. Like, you have to go from 0 to 60, and some people can't do that. And so if you're someone who's been struggling with weight and all of that good stuff, I challenge you to not try to dive into the hard, right? So many people like, if it's hard, it must be good. No, if it's hard, I'm gonna want to give up. So I challenge you to say, instead of being like, oh, I'm just gonna dive in intermittent fasting, I would just say, you know what, can I serve hunger? Right? Can I serve hunger? So instead of me, like, if I ate breakfast at say 7 a.m., can I go till 10 a.m. without eating a meal? Can I go to 11 a.m. without eating a meal? Right? And see if I can play with adding more time in between my meals. The other thing, hormones. Like, hormones aren't the end all be all, but with hormones doing the cha 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 right now, and we throw intermittent fasting in the moment, it is definitely going to be a bit of a challenge, because if I'm already like moody, I'm already having trouble sleeping, and I'm already like hot flashing, and I'm trying to white knuckle my way to my 12-hour or my 16-hour fast, I'm just adding on like non-needed stress, right? Why am I stressing about doing it right, doing it perfectly, right? You don't that's just an added stressor in your life that you don't need, that you are inviting into the party. You're just like you're opening the door, you're like, oh, intermittent fasting, just one more thing for me to fucking think about and worry if I'm doing it right, if I'm gonna blow it, right? That's not what you need. And right now it's the biggest thing that so many women that I work with, that if they just got these two things under control, woo, they would be able to like crush stress, right? We're juggling so much crap right now: work, family, what feels like a never ending to do list. Like, it's enough to make anyone's head spin. Like, you're worried, like, how am I going to keep all of the balls up in the air? Then I throw intermittent fasting into the mix, and it's like, oh, I'm supposed to pick up my kids here, there, and everywhere, but I can't eat till noon, but then I won't be home till 2. Like, what do I do? Like, come on, come on. That is just unneeded, unnecessary stress. And so it just cranks up your anxiety. Those kind of things, it's like, you, instead of following blankly, again, ask, how can this fit into my life? If you're someone who's always on the go, it's time to like be like, this isn't working for me. I gave you the example of my client. If she were to stop eating at 6 p.m., well, she's teaching till 7. I'm like, I'm a group fitness instructor myself. By the time I get home, I'm hungry, right? She could only eat from 3 to 5. So she has 2 hours to eat and teach a class. I'm sorry. Even if you don't actively teach a class, having a full belly and teaching a class is torture, right? And then not being able to eat after class, especially after in an average class, I can walk a good 5,000 steps just by walking around, checking form, all of that good stuff. So we have to ask, excuse me, how is this going to work in my life? And then we have the stress debate, right? Sure, some stress is good for us, right? There is good stress. It's called eustress, EUSTRES. But even a little workout is, even this can be it can be good, right? Like I said, I'm a big fan of adding space into your meals. So instead of, can I go 3 hours, 4 hours between eating meals? But it quickly can turn into this like intermittent fasting arms race. Like, I ran 500 miles, I did this and I did this all on an empty stomach. And it just becomes this like this this bragging thing. And for many of us, it can turn into this quickly turn into a form of overtraining, right? And instead of feeling stronger, more energized, you're feeling burnt out, frazzled, and your hormones are like, girl, you are just asking so much of me. So those are the reasons why I'm not a big fan of intermittent fasting. Now, again, it is a tool. And if you don't come at me, if you're like, Kim, it's working for me, that's great that it works for you. Um, but the uh, North American Society for Menopause, and it's the ultimate thing on all things menopause here in the US. And it isn't exactly endorsing intermittent fasting for menopausal women. It's not recommended, right? They say that, like, between stress, hormones, it outweigh those two things are what is going to outweigh the potential benefits. So before you start hopping on the intermittent fasting bandwagon, let's just start to think twice, right? I am a fan of using it as a tool, that you might have a season that you intermittent fast, but it's not, this is, I intermittent fast, like, right, kind of back in the day when I was like, oh, I'm paleo, I'm keto, I'm, carnivore, 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 right? It's important to listen to your body and understand, is this actually working for you? Because I have a lot of clients that I recently, and I'm guilty of this too. So, like, I'm calling myself out. I didn't eat before I worked out in the morning, and one day I did a podcast probably about a month ago That was a summary of Dr. Stacy Sims, and she is an women's endurance athlete expert, and she talks about the importance of why women, especially over 40, we need to have some food on board. I'm not talking sit down to have like the Denny's Grand Slam. I'm talking have something on board. And so over the last couple of months, I have been adding in those applesauce packets that I eat on my way to the gym. And it has been a game changer for my energy. Sometimes I've found myself t- um, bonking in the middle of a workout and not kind of giving my all. But with this applesauce on board, between applesauce and the creatine I've been drinking with my workout, it has been a game changer for my energy levels. And I feel my lifts have been very different. So, for those of you guys who want to intermittent fast, I challenge you to have something before you work out. And I always, when it comes to intermittent fasting, I always hear people like, this okay, is this breaking my fast, is that not breaking my fast, and here's the thing, right? There's no one up, I don't know where your individual judge is being like, oh, that girl, she put cream in her coffee, who does she think she is? Demerit. Or, oh my God, that girl, she had an applesauce packet. Who does she think she is? Demerit, right? Like, who is this invisible judge? And maybe these little things are what you need to actually move the needle, right? We're all trying to move that needle on the scale or change our body composition. And we don't know, right? So do a test, like give it 30 days, give it 60 days and see what happens, right? Because think about it, you don't be having a hot flash and thinking about like, can I eat in an hour? Or you just want to be like, I just need to get through this. So if you're dealing with that hormonal roller coaster, I totally get it. So what I would recommend instead of intermittent fasting is that make it shorter fasting windows. Can you go anywhere from 3 to 5 hours between a meal? Right. Let's focus on that. Um, or close the kitchen after dinner and be like, I close the kitchen after dinner and that's when the fast starts, versus like, I must stop eating at 6 p.m. Like, no, whatever time. I teach on Monday, Tuesday night. I don't walk in my door until 8:30, 9 o'clock sometimes. I start teaching at 4:30. There's no way I could stop eating at 4:30. Like, there's no freaking way. I would literally be arrested for killing somebody. So, but I have been working on adding more space in between my meals, right? So I went from 5 meals a day down to 4 meals a day, down to 3 meals a day, and really working on adding space in between those meals. Maybe you don't intermittent fast every day. Maybe you intermittent fast like 2 days a week, right? And the rest of the week, you open up, you try to have more space in between your days, in between your meals. Like, think of it as like, a workout recovery, right? We have rest days. So maybe it is a rest day. And mix it up, give yourself some days off, but also listen to your body, right? Are you like just trying to like, white knuckle your way through, breaking your fast? Are you giving up shit that you love? Like for me, cream in my coffee brings me joy. That's what gets my ass out of bed. And I was like, I'm not willing to compromise that. But I could do other things, right? I was not willing to compromise that. So decide, right? What does this look like for you? Like, you can make the rules, but also I want to look at your meals, right? Just because I'm eating in a 8 hour window, I can still eat shit in an 8 hour window, right? I can still spend my days at McDonald's. I can still overeat in an 8 hour window. So let's be mindful, right? What do our balanced meals look like? Are we getting in enough protein? Excuse me, fats, fiber, right? Are we feeling our meals making us feel full, satisfied, and satiated, right? Or am I like kind of like feeling like I need to like wheel myself out of said meal? And yeah, breakfast, right? I alluded to this. Like if you are an early morning exerciser, put something on board, because that is what's going to help you fuel your muscle. Like, I'm going to go fancy talk here. There is a cycle. It's called the Krebs cycle. And that's a cycle that helps kick off our our muscle building process, right? And so it's like I want you to think about like it's a Ferris wheel. So like the food comes on board, and then that Ferris wheel can start to turn. And this Ferris wheel can only start to turn if there's a little bit of a carb on board, like a little bit of carb, a little bit of protein. So there's so many, I like the applesauce because it's already kind of like pre-digested. So it's really easy on my stomach. Some people could do a half a banana. Some people could do like a half of a small like protein only shake with just water, right? I want you to think of it more of like a quick acting carb, like so like a piece of fruit that's really quick and easy, or quick acting protein. Maybe you have 2 bites of a Greek yogurt. I like like I said, I like the applesauce because it literally something I can be eating as I'm driving myself to the gym. That's why I like it. And so at the end of the day, intermittent fasting can be a tool, but it's not the only tool in your toolbox, right? As you turn 40, we need to start to pull all these different levers because all of our old tricks aren't going to work. And even if a trick starts to work in 40, it might not work for you at 45. And then you'll be left wondering, like, what's happening? What's going on again? So we have to really start to tune in and start to fine tune how things are working for our body, and our lifestyle, right? Like, don't be afraid to experiment. Um, because that's how we find what works, right? You give it a test it for 30 days, and we see how it goes. So I am going to be following up this episode in a couple weeks, answering any additional questions that you might have about intermittent fasting. So do me a favor, reach out to me. You can find me at hello@kimbarnesjefferson.com, or you can hit me up on the socials, Kim Jefferson Coach on Instagram, Kim Jefferson Coach uh, on Facebook, or join me in my Facebook group. All the stuff, all of my links and so forth are in the show notes. All right, magic makers, enjoy the rest of your day, and I will talk to you soon.